helps to plug in. Welcome to April, I think it's the 19th, 2022. My name is Kurt, and this is my daily Good Life meditation. I do this every morning to remind myself of my life objectives and principles, and to see how I'm doing them, applying them to my immediate moments, my immediate past, the last 24 hours, and the forthcoming day. First, last night and yesterday, the usual, up about an hour before the alarm, thinking things. I'm gonna have to start a club. I had a couple more people reach out to me yesterday, indicating that they are having the same trouble with the morning insomnia. Is that insomnia when you can't wake up before the alarm, or is it insomnia when you can't go to sleep? I don't know. Anyway, so I tried something new. I ran across something in my book, the biography of Dr. Johnson. Johnson was asked a question about this same problem. I guess this was a problem in the 18th century. And he said, quite pointedly, and just as Dr. Johnson always does, he said it's very important to not attend to the thoughts that are coming. So, for example, this morning I woke up immediately thinking about, excuse me, I got an itch. I was thinking about a risk and an issue that are combined, that are kind of connected, related to one of my projects. And I remembered Dr. Johnson's words and immediately put that out of my mind. Now, Dr. Johnson recommended keeping books handy in the night to read. I've tried that, and that leads to a really bad day because I don't get enough sleep and I'm not, fortified for the day, and so I don't do that. I found it's better to just lay in bed, tossing and turning in a twilight slumber than to get up in earnest and try to get back to bed, especially given that my problem arises an hour before the alarm goes off. I could just get up that hour earlier. I wonder what would happen if I got up at 4 instead of 5, which I used to do. Would I then not have enough sleep? I already go to bed at 9. Would I have to go to bed at 8? It's before the sun's even down, though. Anyway, Dr. Johnson said to read, but I'm not going to do that. But he did say, at least not yet, he did say don't attend to the thoughts. So I tried something. I tried two things instead. One was I tried to remember past hikes in Japan. I could do it in the desert too. Maybe I should do it in the desert. It's more immediate memory. I found that my scope wasn't good. I got stuck on one little road farm road that I used to hike. And then I got stuck on one little stretch of mountain pass where I used to have to struggle to get over the bridge. That's from a video called the Hike of Wonders. So I don't know why those two were sticking out, but it didn't fill much time. I guess even though I've done lots of hiking, my memory of it isn't as keen. So the other thing I tried, I tried two things. The one, I'll talk about that one last, if at all. I tried two things. The one thing that I tried, which was interesting, was I entertained a new thought that I had, I think it was yesterday, regarding free will. I don't believe we have free will. I think, and I don't believe in determinism either. I don't think everything's laid out. I think there's too much disorder and chaos and randomness in the universe. But I do believe that the choices that we make are the only choices that we could have ever made. We can make any choice we want, but what we ultimately do choose, that's the only one. That's the one that was going to happen, kind of, in that moment, right? It wasn't like it was foretold, 100 years before I was born that I was going to sip this coffee right now. But I had no other choice than to sip this coffee right now, because the universe is pushing pressure to do things from every corner, and it's a chain of events all the way back to the start of the universe that are not nudging and jostling me. And this consciousness is just a decision engine that seems to be under my own will and control, but really all it is reconciling all the forces that are upon me, to and allowing, maybe not allowing, but channeling these forces into a particular decision. Similar to, and I came up with this mental image, similar to a rock falling down a cliff, whereas the rock was lifted in the mountain by the pressures of the plate tectonics or volcanic action. So too are we lifted into our position now by the energy of the sun that comes and strikes the earth, and it's an open system, right? So it's pushing against entropy. It's order. We can seemingly violate the second law of thermodynamics by the virtue of the fact that energy continues to come into the earth. So I'm an organized. I am a system of order. I'm not dissolving away into chaos because more energy comes in. So I'm lifting. It's like lifting up the mountain, building potential energy up the way, and then eventually that potential energy transforms into kinetic energy as the rock eventually stumbles down the mountain. Bam, 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 bam. Energy and hitting things and jostling and gravity, tracing it down. It seems the rock isn't making decisions about striking this and that and bouncing here. It's simply doing things that are a consequence of the circumstance it found itself in when it was released from its footing in the mountain. So too am I jostling down the mountain of life, banging into things, being influenced by things. Circumstance, is playing its part all the way down the mountain. Now, I entertained that thought as I was laying there. That did a pretty good trick. It didn't last, but it did the trick. I was like, oh yeah, and all these things that I'm dealing with, all of these risks and issues and challenges at work and all that's just part of that. That's other rocks that I bang into as I tumble down the mountain. They're there. I'm like that rock, seemingly thinking I'm making decisions to go to the right and left, when really it's energies and momentums and inertia of all sorts. I like the sound of that. So that kind of worked. I might be onto something there, which is to dwell on. I've tried that before. I've tried to dwell on my good life of principles. Didn't do the good life meditation. It didn't do so good, but this one did. The trick is, though, we gotta believe. You gotta believe. Hallelujah. That free will is an illusion, that we don't have free will, which it's a seemingly convincing illusion because so many of us believe that we do, and I do believe that, and I believe it on faith. I can't prove it, yet I believe. So it works for me, but if you don't believe that free will is an illusion, it might not work for you. The other thing that I threatened to not talk about, but I will, it came to mind. I don't know where this came. I think it's because part of the horror show. That's one thing about the horrors. They tend to become nightmares. And it did. So I was watching the news yesterday about the war in Ukraine, and there was an image of a rocket hitting a Russian tank. And they have the auto loaders in the turret, so they have the live ammunition right there in the turret. And when that goes off, it's a relatively slow burning propellant. So sometimes it blows the tank up. A blessing that would be. versus instead simply igniting the propellant, causing the inside of the tank to become basically a blast furnace, and the flames, coming out of the commander's hatch and out of the barrel of the gun if the breech is open. And I saw that briefly yesterday. Now you can just kind of you can kind of go past and not think about it, but my mind, will hold, because, I'm picturing, I know what's going on. There's people in there, hopefully they didn't survive the concussion of the blast, which is a good chance that they didn't. But, hopefully they're basically in the blast furnace. That came to mind last night as I was just, an hour ago, as I was laying there in bed. That did the trick too, and I don't want to use that one. But that did the trick too in terms of relativity, right? Relative issues, So what that I've got a little risk report and a little issue that I've got to address. There are men being consumed in blast furnaces and tanks. A horror show. Now I can use that. I can use the fact of the horror show to my advantage, so to speak, anytime I want. I won't list anymore. I've got a nice collection of horror in my mind that I pick up by virtue of my engagement with the world. It's hard to be an adult and not, collect horror stories. I don't collect them willingly. They come to me. I encounter them. I bang into them as I tumble down the hill. And then I'm stuck with them in my head. So I'm not going to use that to battle my sleeplessness, but I will remember that I don't have any free will. That seems to do the job. And maybe if this keeps up, maybe I'll try switching my schedule a little bit. Maybe I'll wake up at 4 and make the hour of 4 to 5 a reading hour. Maybe I'll try that. Okay, other than that, as for yesterday's challenges, I did have a challenge. I encountered I made a video about it on YouTube and on Instagram. And I made someone erected a Christian cross up on the top of the mountain where I hike in the afternoon sometimes. And I was up there, and I think it's public land. And I was up there and I was thinking, why? It's like I'm no longer a Christian, but I used to go and stand up on the top of that mountain and look over the expanse, and I've got this giant cross in front of me, blazoned in letters, Jesus is love, or something like that. No, Jesus is good, I think is what it says. Anyway, I was like, that was a challenge. It was like someone had, pardon the pun, but violated our sacred space, because it's a community mountain, it's a hiking trail. And I would have felt the same way if it had been any religious symbol or anything whatsoever. I mean, if someone had put up a sign up there that says eat it Mel's, I would have been, disconcerted about that. I just leave the damn mountain alone, right? No, anyway, I decided that instead of letting it bother me, I would just see that as an opportunity to flex my temperance and to say, okay, well, so be it. This is the nature of things. This is the nature of a community like this. It's more of a conservative community. People, a lot more believers here than where I lived in, or at least expressly believing people here than what I used to in Orange County. So people are going to put crosses on mountains. So what? I can think about other things. So I'll use that. So I think I successfully did it, other than the fact that I'm talking about it now, and I made a video about it. But I thought it was an opportunity for me to do better. Okay, let's do the good life. 7 objectives and 30 principles. To always have my life settled, my relationships and my tasks, my activities, my mission, and my finances, so that I'm ready to die. And to be careful about how I consume my time, to not waste it or spend it, but to live my moments earnestly in an effective manner. To work hard on my objectives and principles, to make sure that they are sound, and to not be afraid to throw them out when they're found lacking, or change them, or add new ones. To react well to the circumstance of the universe, the things that happen, the things that I encounter, like the cross yesterday on top of the mountain. To react well, to be a reasonable human being, recognizing the nature of things, and that's just it, to recognize the nature of things. To react well, to do good things throughout the day, find ways to make the world better. To recognize my limits, what is within my possibility of my scope of control and capability, and what is not. And to just always do one thing at a time, and to do that thing slowly. To not multitask, to not rush, unless I'm trying to scoot out of the way of a train. Now my 30 principles and these are to always want to and be willing to and to engage in a fight against what I think is true and what others propose to be true, if it's important. To not settle easily on my beliefs. To be a reasonable human being, honest, objective, and skeptical. To remember that though I apparently do not have a soul, I do have a little consciousness that gets to wink and flitter and blink for a few more years. And that's a good thing. And that consciousness is ultimately trapped within me. Trapped and doomed. Can't get out. Nowhere to go. No connection to others during life. All I can do is gesticulate and wave and shout across the waves to one another, to others. To have my purpose, which is, there's three: to be a good father, and by extension a good husband. But really raising my daughter is the main focus of that. Life wants us to make more life, make copies of ourselves, succeed at that, and then get the heck out of the way. I also want to be a virtuous human being, helping to improve the well-being of others, and of course myself. And then to share the message of my books, The Good Life, in particular, that creed, this is the very thing I'm reciting right now. And the story of how I got there. Sorry. To keep in mind that everything is little bits and pieces. The universe pulls together things and for a while and then pulls them apart. To know that there's a nature to everything and everyone, some way that they are, and to abide that. And then to strive to be a mature human being, recognizing my successes and my failures, striving to do better, and having the strength to do better. To remember that free will is an illusion, a quite convincing illusion. I think I've talked enough about that one already. To be a social human being, to seek after the company of others, to offer my companionship and my company. I had a tough one yesterday with that. There's a man, I told you all before that community is full of retired people, a lot of elderly, not old, senior men. A lot of them hang out in their garage or in their yard or on their lawn. It's interesting. Puttering. There's one guy that likes to talk to me, and he's come quite out and simply said that he's lonely. His wife is somewhere in the house. All of them, it seems that their wives are somewhere in the house. I'm not making that up. They tell me that. And the men are, out on the frontier of the house, in the garage, peeking out from open garage doors, or puttering in the yard, like I said. This gentleman putters with his little boat and his garage and his truck. And I encounter him maybe twice a week. And he's told me that he's lonely. He's also told me that he's always good. I think he's trying to convince himself. I always say, how you doing today? And he says, he's always doing great. Like I said, I think he's trying to convince himself that he's always doing great. He's only been retired for maybe 9 months. And he told me once that retirement is harder than he thought it would be. Anyway, he'll latch on when I come by. He'll keep me there. Sometimes I indulge in that, partially because it's good. Well, his conversation is not interesting. He talks about fishing all the time. I'm not interested in fishing. I mean, that's, how, and Dr. Johnson talks about this too. Old people get to the point where there's nothing really new in their lives, right? Nothing new happening. So they look back, and they're full of stories, and they tell those stories over and over again. He hasn't gotten to that point with me, but it's always the same thing. It's he fishes at a lake up here. It's talk about fish. So I'll listen, and it's not an engaging talk. It's not like he's talking and soliciting anything from me. If I try to add something in, it kind of looks at it for a second, puts it aside. It's not a conversation. It's more of it's kind of like a lecture. And so I sit there. If I've got my dogs, I can usually shuffle along. The dogs need to get going, so I'll give them 10 minutes. And it's not charity. I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying making him happy, and I learn a little bit from him, and I get to share a little bit. You get the picture. But really, he's a man that needs a friend, and he needs more to do, because retirement's a little challenging. And I'm worried I'm going to be the same way. This neighborhood is full of such men. So yesterday he had me hard. So I had to kind of extricate myself after about 5 minutes, because I knew that I was running late. I didn't have the dogs. It was a little warm yesterday. I took them for a walk, and they wanted to come home because it was warm. So I brought the dogs home, and then I went walking myself, and I walked up to the top of the mountain. That's where I saw the cross. So I was late, and dinner time was coming on, so I had to go. And I could tell he was a little disappointed that I didn't give him more time. But anyway, I want to be a social human being. I want to talk to people, even if it's not interesting. I want to do that, because it's a good thing to do, and we need each other. And maybe someday someone will spare me a few moments when I'm old and alone and retired. I also want to be a good speaker. I want to be very careful about what I say and the words that I use, being very deliberate in communication as well. I'm back on the principles now. Also my written word as well. I want to be a temperate human being. Temperance being, of course, the controlled exercise of our energies and emotions and all that stuff. Temperate in terms of my consumption, how much work I do, how much work I consume, how much play I consume, how much reading. Well, I can read all I want. There's no quote on that. It's interesting how reading, since about more than a year ago, I started to really get back into it in earnest. It really is something you can just pick up and lose yourself into. It takes a little while of practice to get your reading legs back, but once you do, they're back. It's like Harold and his running. Mr. Menifee. Anyway, I'm totally off base. Temperance, to be controlled consumption of things. The horror show, the recognition of the terrible, all the horrible things that are happening to us and our animals and wildlife. Keeping that in mind, even when I don't want it in my mind, like that tank picture. That's what I have to bear, though. I have to bear those facts. That's another principle. That's the next principle. That which must be borne. So much to bear. But that's what adulting is all about. Then two principles. To recognize that it's so possible to distract myself from the evidence that we're alone. If you go alone, you find quickly that we are alone. And we don't want to see that. We don't talk about it. We don't look. We don't hear. We distract ourselves with our busyness of our work and our family and our home and TV and sports and hobbies and fishing and best of all, religion, which tells us from an institutional perspective that we're not alone depending on your religion. And that we'll live forever and salvation and lots of good news, so much so that we'll want to put a cross up on the hill to remind ourselves of it. Put a cross up where the edge of the great indifference yawns. I don't see that. Just focusing on the cross. Next comes the best seat in the house. To not want to be anywhere other than where I am, doing what I'm doing, being who I am. All the while striving to be better. And to move forward in life to new adventures and new chapters. To, even though I've got this room so well settled, to be ready to upend it, to put it all out on the street for a yard sale. To pack a few essentials into a single bag and be ready to move on. Always ready to move on, always having a bag packed. Not to run away, but to run towards a new life, a new adventure, new chapters. Once we're settled in, that's when we begin to atrophy. Our legs begin to go weak and sour, weak and yielding, not sour. To see the deep level and the surface level risks of life, to attend to the surface stuff, the job, the family, the security, the home, planning for retirement, but then to also attend to the really deep risk of not finding ourselves. To be careful to not sin, where in my worldview, sin is two things. It's believing things that are untrue and gossiping. And in particular, the characteristics of the untrue things are believing things, being untrue, being a liar is one. Believing things too readily, credulity. Faith, believing things and using the fact of the belief as the foundation of the belief, which is a circular situation. Authority, believing things based on the seeming force and inertia and weight of the person or the institution that's claiming something. Dogma, believing something because so many others do and it's the tradition and look at the size of that book and all the trappings of an institution. And then, as I mentioned before, gossip. And doing any of those sins leads to a kind of a damnation in the here and now, where we're stuck hurting people or stuck believing things that may not be true. So I'd rather be in doubt than to believe things that I'd have no good reason to believe, or have a little good reason to believe. To remember that when I'm dead, that's the end. There'll be no afterlife. There's no evidence that there's any afterlife. There's certainly no evidence that we have anything like a soul. So therefore, since if there is no afterlife, there'll be no reunion. We won't see our loved ones again. We won't have a chance to make amends. We won't there won't be any justice in another world. This is the only world we apparently get. So I want to reach out to my loved ones now, and I want to make amends today, and I want to pursue justice, in legal means. No vigilante here. I want to pursue justice as well. Well, there's a chance for it. No one punishes Hitler after he's gone, and no one avenges Anne Frank after she's gone. This is the only chance that we get for those things. At least that's what that's where the evidence points to. There's no good reason to think otherwise. At least none that I've seen so far. To have at least one great life adventure, something that is a centerpiece of our life, our story, our chance to tell a little bit about who we are. Become, let's not tell about who we are, but that's the next one. That's the season of philosophy. The great life adventure is having something in our life that is our story, our adventure, preferably in our 20s. There was a guy that joined the forum, not the forum, but the Discord yesterday, 23-year-old young man in the United Kingdom. And both Michael and I he just finished, this 23-year-old just finished university, and Michael and I jumped on it. It's like, well, what are you going to do? What we're hoping he's going to do is he's going to do something really fun and interesting, right? Now that before he jumps into the serious stuff. It kind of sounds like he's going to jump into the serious stuff. And I'm sure Michael and I are sitting there eating our popcorn going, have a big adventure. Go out and have a big adventure, and then come back and do the serious stuff. There's plenty of time for the serious stuff. But that's just us. I hate to speak for you, Michael, but that was the sense I got from your comment. Or it was my comment building on your comment. That's right. Anyway, the season of philosophy is a time to record what we learn along the way. Having a journal or a paint easel or a guitar or whatever it takes handy to express whatever words or ideas come of life. Typically, as we proceed beyond the Great Life Adventure. And you can have more than one Great Life Adventure. So I keep my journal handy right over there. It's always open to the fresh page. Write down whatever words come. Next is the bullseye aim. The reminder that we strive to hit the target dead center, but we usually miss by a bit. And that's okay. And then the uphill climb. Life is a steady uphill trudge, up, until we're dead. The trick is to not stop. Once we stop, we start digging ourselves into the side of the mountain. Our forward momentum ends. Our vista fails to change, the view that we can see. And we begin the process of falling to pieces in a way, which can be a pleasant thing. I mean, we can fall to pieces, and it can be pleasant, in a pleasant hole in the ground. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, it's your life to live. It's my life to live. I would rather not. wait out the end in a hole in the ground. But die upon the side of the mountain, taking another step. The arena and utility principle suggests that we should keep our principles handy, like on a tool belt, to use throughout the day, which is what I try to do. This is why I do this. I try to keep these things foremost in my mind so that I can use them through the day. 2 more principles. The next one is nothing is enough. Not really. You'd suffer pretty bad if we had nothing. But it's a suggestion that to get by with less, right? That there's really something to be had of a simple, temperate life. So I strive for that. And then the last principle is the principle of fun. A reminder to enjoy life along the way. And a curious observation, thank you, Dr. Johnson, that pleasure, the enjoyment of life, is sometimes at its most sweetest in forecast, when we're hoping, when we're anticipating what's to come, or when we're looking back at what has been. The moment of now is tainted and troubled and challenged by the circumstances that are happening. We miss the mark. Things happen along the way. I didn't expect that. What the heck? I got a flat tire. There's a fly in my soup. All these things happen. But when we're forecasting the future, we don't foresee all of those things. So we can enjoy kind of a pleasantness. And when we look back, we don't see it either. Dr. Johnson makes one allowance for joy in the here, in the moment of now. He says the only time we can really be happy in the moment of now is when we've been drinking. He doesn't recommend that, because that's kind of a dangerous route to go. So instead, I try to enjoy the anticipatory moments, looking forward, and then also the reflection back. I'm trying to change my paradigm, the way I go through life. So Yumiko and I are planning to go back to Japan in a couple of years, and I'm really capitalizing on that, thinking a lot about that. Going to enjoy that. Created a new page on the website. I haven't debuted it yet, but to start laying things out. And that's my good life meditation for today. Oh, one last thing I need to plan for the coming day. Today's going to be a good day. I've got that issue and that risk I was mentioning. I'll tackle those. I've got some important meetings. It's all kind of relative. I don't anticipate many things to get me. After I'm done with this, I'll fire up the computer to get ready to render the video, and then I'm going to go over and I'll read the Bible. I think I'm on Isaiah 16 or maybe 17 this morning, so I'll read a chapter of the Bible, and then I'll go over and write my journal entry, and then I'll take the dogs downstairs to be fed, and then I'll comb my hair again, put on a business shirt, and get my day started. I wish you all the best. Be safe, but not too safe.